Okay, let's get started. Welcome to today's IntSights webinar, focusing on our integration with Bandura Cyber and how to automatically block threats with external threat intelligence. My name is Stacy Moran. I'm the Technology Integration Alliance's Marketing Manager at IntSights and the host for today's webinar. We thank you for making the time today to learn more about our technology partnership with Bandura Cyber and how IntSights customer and soon to be Bandura Cyber customer, Davis Polk, expects to benefit from this valuable integration. Before I introduce today's speakers, I just want to touch on a couple of quick housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. After the event, you will receive an email with the link to the recording, which we encourage you to share with any of your colleagues who are unable to attend today's webinar. Please use the questions pane in GoToWebinar to submit any questions that arise during today's presentation, and we will do our best to address them at the conclusion of the formal presentation segment of the webinar. Lastly, for additional information on IntSights, including our broad portfolio of technology integrations, please visit the Technology Integration Alliances and resources pages on our website. You'll want to be sure to check out the IntSights plus Bandura Cyber solution brief that provides more details about our integration. I am pleased to be joined today by Asaf Regev, Director of Product Marketing at IntSights, Todd Weller, Chief Strategy Officer at Bandura Cyber, and Richard Timble, Head of Information Security at Davis Polk. Now a quick look at today's agenda. Asaf will begin by sharing a brief overview of IntSights, followed by Todd, who will provide an overview of Bandura Cyber's offering, followed by a description of the IntSights and Bandura integration, including a brief demo. Then Rich will tell us why Davis Polk was interested in this integration, how the organization plans to use the solution, and the business value the firm will derive from connecting IntSights and Bandura Cyber. Now I will turn it over to Asaf for the IntSights overview.
Thank you, Stacy. So on my end, I still can't see the first slide. I'll just jump right in. I think there's a bit of a lag on my end, but it's perfectly fine. So thanks everyone, and again, as Stacy mentioned, thanks for taking the time and joining our session. Again, an interesting kind of session. It's not every day that we get the opportunity to not only hear about another partner or an integration partner, but also from from an existing customer and hear firsthand the benefits that they were able to achieve from the joint solution. So it should be an interesting one. So before we kind of jump into some of the things that Stacy mentioned, I want to give you a kind of a brief overview of IntSights and kind of tell you who we are and kind of start off with that. So as the slide implies, we were founded in 2015. As you can see, the top row basically are the three co-founders of the company, pretty young lads, directly almost out of the military, the intelligence unit, 8,200 of the Israeli military. But that's kind of only the tip of the iceberg. So the company has substantially grown since then, since our first days in 2015. And right now it's kind of headquartered in Midtown Manhattan, and we're happy to say that we've crossed the 170 employee number, which is for an Israeli company of this size, it's sort of a big achievement, and it's something that we're very proud of. Kind of obviously with that and with that size, obviously we were able to amass over 300 customers on a global scale. And on our next slide, you'll be able to see some examples of some of the of our footprint and where we have those customers on a global basis. Aside from obviously from that, we've raised over $70 million, and our latest round was led by Kumar Capital late last year. Our D round was led last year, as I said, by Kumar Capital, making our total funding for over $70 million. Again, aside from our financial and and institutional backing, I think again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we've amassed an extremely seasoned leadership team with very long and diverse records of success. And obviously the first, top row is our co-founders, but we have additional employees who have vast experience in a number of roles previously, from IBM to Carbon Black to smaller and bigger companies of all sizes and for multitudes of verticals. On our next slide, as Stacy just jumped into, I'd like to kind of talk to you, as I said before, about kind of since going to market, where we are currently. So as I said before, we have over 300 customers in over 15 different verticals in 6 continents. And obviously it's important to acknowledge, as I said before, that some of these customers or enterprise-wide deployments are covering a large number of verticals, from telcos to insurance companies to technical and financial service firms, all the way to gaming and leisure, as obviously, as you can see here. But also an interesting one is e-commerce and retail, which are really booming nowadays with the whole with the whole COVID-19 happening. So thank you for that. Next slide, please. And I think here is it's kind of is almost showing kind of almost our differentiators and and what it is that makes us so much or not so much but different than some of our other competitors, and what helps us to be differentiated from the rest of the pack. So I think with the understanding of not just providing point solutions, what we're actually delivering here, as you can see here in the slide, is basically, I would say, 3 main pillars. The first is obviously our threat command, which is short, or TC for short, is basically the first, or was the first kind of product out of the suite. And what basically it provides is it helps you with understanding and tailoring alerts as it relates specifically to external threats targeting your organization, excuse me, and/or industry. And obviously, it starts off with proprietary collection and analytics, again targeting it specifically to your digital assets and your digital footprint. And if we move to the right from there, obviously is our TIP, or our threat intelligence platform, and with that is our investigation API. And we can go into more details, or if you want to get additional information, all of that is available on the website. But as a whole, our threat intelligence platform basically helps you centralize intelligence and intelligence feeds and enriches IOCs, as well as prioritizing them to help you better investigate and respond automatically to threats. As we move further to the right, our kind of risk analysis kind of solutions, and obviously the first one being the vulnerability risk analyzer, which is basically a very in very simple terms is a tool or a capability that basically helps you as an organization to instantly prioritize or reprioritize your patching for critical vulnerabilities. And again, that's as part or encapsulated inside our our enterprise threat protection suite. So that's not just a sub-product or a product on its own. It's it's kind of bundled or together within the full suite. And an additional one obviously is our threat third party, and this is simply stated, basically a tool that helps you identify the level of risk your organization is potentially faced with as it relates to third parties. So basically leveraging the existing data that we already have, we can map that information into that tool and give you an analysis, a real-time analysis of the risks that pertain to your third parties or third-party vendors. Additionally, obviously into that, as we move to the right, obviously is our threat research services. And obviously, and I think a unique one in our space, is our takedown and remediation services. Again, these are done completely internally without relying on external third-party vendors. This is done internally. We have a dedicated team of analysts who do the kind of the analysis of the specific requests from our customers, but also kind of take them from A to Z, whether automatically or manually, or kind of manually aided with an analyst to completely remediate and take down a potential threat. So with that, I think that that we kind of cover pretty much everything. Obviously, everything is encapsulated with our a web interface. So obviously being a SaaS product, everything is delivered to you as a web interface, and obviously with our integrations, and as Stacy mentioned at the beginning, and we have a number of them, a large number of them actually. We help you with your threat orchestration, whether it's via SIEM or SOAR, and obviously being able to give you that mitigation and automation capability. So with that, I'll pass the baton over to our next speaker. So thank you.
Thanks, Asaf. Hi, it's Todd Weller, Chief Strategy Officer of Bandura Cyber. In the next few minutes, I'll give you an overview of Bandura Cyber, who we are, what we do, why we do it, and why customers use our threat intelligence firewall platform. And I'll also talk about the integration with IntSights, including a demo, show you how quick and easy it is to make IntSights threat intelligence actionable in our platform. About Bandura, we're 100% focused on making threat intelligence actionable. What that means is enabling organizations to use threat intelligence to block threats before they hit the network. There are a few themes that are core to what we do. Easy. It's important that making threat intelligence actionable is easy. You have to have solutions that are easy to deploy, easy to use. Open. That's letting organizations use the threat intelligence they want and making it easy to integrate with other sources of threat intelligence. Our integration with IntSights is a great example of this. And then automated. This to me is simple. We all need to do things to make our jobs easier, and automation is an important component of that. As you can see, we've been around since 2014. We're headquartered in Tysons, Virginia, and we have over 250 customers. We also have a strategic partnership with AIG, where if you are an AIG cyber insurance customer and you have an annual premium of over $5,000, you qualify for a complimentary Bandura Cyber Threat Intelligence Firewall subscription and appliance. Next slide. So let's dig into the problem. What problems do we solve? So it starts with traditional network security controls. They're having a tough time keeping up with today's threats. There's lots of reasons behind this. Threat volumes continue to grow. There's more encrypted traffic they need to process. And, firewalls are doing a lot of things these days. It's a never-ending array of functions. But there's also a more fundamental problem here, which is next-generation firewalls rely on their own proprietary threat intelligence to detect and block threats. The threat intel they use is based on activity they see within their customer bases. And while this threat intelligence has value, it's simply too narrow a view of threat activity. That's exactly why more organizations are using external threat intelligence from great providers like IntSights. Next slide. As organizations embrace threat intelligence and use it in their security operations, what we find is challenges operationalizing it and making it actionable. And a significant challenge here is that next generation firewalls don't play nicely with external threat intelligence. There's volume limitations as far as the total number of indicators they can handle. There can be list size limits as far as number of lists, size of lists, and limited integration options. Next slide. So let's look at some actual data to illustrate these challenges. So if you look at the top charts, these are IP limitations and domain maximum entries for a leading next generation firewall provider. As you can see on the IP side, at the low end, 50,000 IPs, and for mid-range and high end, 150,000 IPs. That's not a lot of IPs. The domain side, you can see it ranges from 50,000 up to 4 million for their high-end appliance. And those are that high-end appliance is a solution being used by very large enterprises and service providers. To put that into context, there's a couple examples of some threat feeds. One is an IP reputation feed from a commercial provider that you can see has nearly 4.6 million IP indicators on it. And the second is a malicious domain blacklist that has nearly 25 million indicators. As you can see, it doesn't take much to get to the limits of firewalls with respect to third-party threat intelligence. Next slide, please. So let's give you an overview of the Bandura Cyber Threat Intelligence Firewall platform. The first thing I'll say is the solution itself is turnkey and easy to deploy and highly automated. As far as what it does, there's two primary things it does. First, we aggregate and integrate threat intelligence in the cloud. Specifically, we're aggregating IP and domain threat indicators from multiple sources, commercial, government, open source, and industry with ISAC, ISAL threat intel feeds. So we're aggregating those to provide out-of-the-box threat intelligence. On the integration side, we're making it easy to integrate IP and domain indicators from any source. That could be threat intelligence platforms like IntSights, could be SIM source systems, and that's kind of key. So once we aggregate and integrate the IP and domain indicators, we deliver those down to the Bandura Cyber Threat Intelligence Firewall. Our Threat Intelligence Firewall is deployed inline on the network, typically in front of the firewall, and it's looking at inbound and outbound network traffic, making an allow or deny decision based on primarily threat intelligence. So that could be reputation feeds, which are categorized and scored indicators. It could be blacklists and whitelists. It also has the ability to make an allow or deny decision based on where the traffic is coming from, so geo-IP blocking, or what network it's coming from based on autonomous system number. Our threat intelligence firewall is purpose-built to use large volumes of threat intelligence indicators and can support up to 150 million unique IP and domain indicators. Next slide, please. A common question we get is, how does your threat intelligence firewall interplay with a next generation firewall? And the short answer is we complement next generation firewalls. Next generation firewalls do things we don't do, right? They do lots of VPN. They do deep packet inspection. That's an important difference. We don't. When it comes to, the key differences, it comes down to the breadth of threat intelligence. As I mentioned earlier, we are focused on being open and providing a broad view of threat intelligence, whereas next generation firewalls are more narrow, focused on their own proprietary. Our ability to integrate third-party indicators is very high compared to firewalls. I mentioned that 150 million unique IP and domain, and you saw real-world data where firewalls are in, the low to mid-millions. Again, firewalls do different things. So we don't do deep packet inspection, which means firewalls will look at broader indicator types. And then from a policy management perspective, we tend to be more simple compared to firewalls. Next slide. So briefly, why do customers use Bandura Cyber? It tends to be three key reasons. The first is to strengthen their network defense. They want to use a broader mix of threat intelligence, and they want to use it proactively to block threats before they hit the network. The second is to reduce manual workload. We still see lots of customers that are manually manage external blocklists on firewalls. We can automate that. And then third, it's really to maximize ROI. If you invested in threat intelligence, taking action with it helps you to maximize it. And then we also find organizations are able to get more out of their firewall investments as well. Next slide. So now I'll talk about our integration with IntSights and what is called IntSights for Bandura. What we developed together using our respective APIs was an out-of-the-box plugin that enables our threat intelligence firewall platform to block threats based on IntSights threat intelligence. And what I'll show you in a second here is that you can easily create IP and domain blacklists based on threat intelligence from IntSights, and you can customize those based on indicator severity and time last seen. Importantly, you're going to see how easy it is to set this up, and once it's set up, it's automatic, right? The threat feed is dynamic, the indicators are changing, and you don't have to worry about manually updating that. So with that, Stacy, if you want to pass the ball over to me, I'll show you how quick and easy it is to figure this. Okay, so right now I'm in the Bandura Cyber Global Management Center. This is our SaaS-based application that customers use to manage our solution. So I'm going to go over here to blacklists. As you can see, there's two types of blacklists. There's IP and there's domain blacklists. The process is the same for both. To make it easy, I'm just going to do IP. So I click on IP blacklist. I'm going to go over here to the automatic IPv4 blacklist section. I'm going to click create blacklist. And I'm going to name the blacklist. So IntSights dynamic IP blacklist. Give it a description. IntSights IP blacklist. I'm going to select an interval to pull. I'm going to do once an hour. And then from the plugin drop-down menu, I'm going to select IntSights. Click Save and Configure. Then I'll enter in my account ID, which I get from IntSights. The API key from IntSights. And then here's where I pick severity. I'm going to go with high indicators. And then time since last seen, I can go last day to last 4 weeks. I'm going to select last week. I click Save. And just like that, you can see I have an IntSights dynamic IP blacklist. So with that, I'll pass the ball back over to Stacy. And so Richard can take over. Thanks.
Hi, this is Rich Timble. I'm the head of security at Davis Polk. I'm here to talk about why we made the decision to use both products and what we like about the integration. Next slide, please. So when I was thinking about it, I was thinking it reminded me of an old commercial. I don't know if you guys remember, where you had two people running. One had chocolate, one had peanut butter, and they crashed into each other. And, I said, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter. And the other person said, you have my peanut butter and your chocolate. And basically they discover Reese's peanut butter cups, which is really awesome in my opinion. So, that's what this marriage of these two technologies reminded me of. Next slide. First I'm going to talk about why we like each one of the technologies. And, Todd and Oscar covered a lot of that, but we'll focus specifically on what we like. One of the things that we found challenging about IOCs, indicators of compromise in a firewall or in our SIM or in other places, there were inherent limitations in the firewall on how much intelligence we could put into it as far as the number of IOCs. And even with the next gen products and even with the later versions of those, they were still woefully inadequate. As Todd showed, you ranged from 50,000 to 300,000, and as IPv4, there's almost 4 billion addresses. If even 1/10% of that were bad addresses, that's a lot more than 50,000 or 300,000, and so. The strategy that we had to have before then was we were rotating addresses in and out to keep them fresh, but really not able to carry them for a long enough time to carry worthwhile protection from IPs that were bad or domains that were bad. So that was one thing we were looking to solve. And, with Bandura's capability to hold much more than that, we're able to hold those bad IPs and those bad domains for a much longer period of time and give us a better preventative structure. And the second aspect of why we like Bandura is, in this day and age of new gen firewalls, they're doing a lot of jobs with their unified structures. They're the IDS, IPS, they're doing SSL inspection, and, maybe they're doing the VPN tunneling, etc. And that's also why there's a challenge of how many IOCs you can hold in there. Is there's a limited amount of memory space that they set aside for that purpose. So it's trying to use its memory and processing time and CPU time for all these different things. And by being able to put the TIG, the Threat Intelligence Gateway, the Bandura box in front of the firewall, we're able to take that job off of the firewall and give it back more resources for, what it does well, which is, SSL inspection and policy and IDS, IPS. So that's another reason. And, allowing that firewall to focus on those jobs is really key. The other thing we like about Bandura is the statistical visibility as far as what was blocking, where it was coming from, and what was actually being hit. Those are all things that we didn't necessarily have easily in our firewall structure to report on. And to give an example is we were able to look at what IPs were actually being hit, and we realized that what we were doing before, feeding it to firewall, was not blocking as much as when we had the Bandura box in front of there, because we were able to see what was actually being blocked and the actual number of hits, and it was much higher than what the firewalls were capable of carrying. And the last point was it was extremely simple to deploy and use. I think the learning curve from myself and my team was a matter of minutes once the box was put in line. That, obviously is always a good thing when you can cut down on a learning curve so that you can get full value for your investment. And, the support around that was very good. Next slide, please. IntSights, we found was a very interesting platform. There are a lot of threat intelligence vendors out there, but we felt that IntSights was kind of a next-gen version of threat intelligence. The challenge that we had was, we were getting different feeds from different places. We were trying to aggregate them and dedupe them ourselves, and that wasn't really an easy task. It led to a lot of administrative overhead. IntSights does allow us to use different feeds that we feel are high quality, and they also help validate those feeds, as well as allow us to put custom IOCs in and be able to dedupe those, aggregate them together, and push them out very easily. It also does more than just act as a threat intelligence platform for aggregation of threat feeds. It actually does put the intelligence in threat intelligence, and the fact that it's not just a bunch of IOCs that don't have context. It has a very deep, rich research capability on the IOCs to give context of why they're important to you. You can also mark certain assets, whether they might be VIPs in your company or certain domains that you have or IP spaces that you're concerned about, and dig up relevant intelligence that applies specifically to you, so that it helps you prioritize the information that you're trying to feed to your other security devices, and do that very easily and automatically. It really does act as a force multiplier in the fact that what was extremely manual before, or disparate devices with disparate feeds, it allows that centralization and automation orchestration, so that you can have a unified threat intelligence structure across your entire stack. And it's more than just a tip. It really does provide a lot of other values. And I mentioned research. Asif also mentioned their analysts, which I have to say is like having double my team. Their assistance in takedowns has been extremely valuable to us, or research on additional context or deeper intelligence behind a threat that we're concerned about. They're very, very good about responding and helping give us that intelligence. Also, they have a risk module that just came out that allows me to contextualize what my risk posture is based on threat intelligence data, which is great if anyone has to report upward to their management or board about the value of the security, how well the security is doing. It's more than just one of those scorecards out there. It really does help give contextual information around your vulnerability structure and your threat intelligence structure. So that's why we like IntSights as well. And I mean, there's a lot more, but I'm short on time. Next slide, please. And when these two came together, we had talked to each of them and said, we thought this was a great natural marriage. And I think this speaks a lot to both companies, and that as a customer, we had discussions with each of them, and we said, look, we really like this integration. We think it would be a natural marriage. And they said, hey, we'll make this happen. And they made it happen very quickly and very well. And I think by doing that, they helped take basically what is conceptually a reactive security concept, which is IOCs, which means that something happened to someone else, and now you're getting that information. So it's reactive in nature. That something already happened to someone else, and you're using that information to help protect yourself, and helping it make it more proactive, because using those feeds to automatically push out to the edge and to be able to block before it even hits your network definitely gives you a more proactive, preventative stance. The fact that it's easily orchestrated and in automatic now lowers greatly even the lowered administrative overhead we had with each of the individual technologies putting them together. Now makes it almost kind of a fire and forget missile. And having both organizations that have great support structures, able to understand each other's technology, definitely resulted in a better overall client experience for us. Because if there is an issue, it's not a finger pointing exercise. That so often happens when you have integrations, and you call Microsoft and they say, hey, well, it's that problem or it's someone else's problem, or but when you talk to these two organizations, they understand each other well, and they understand how they intersect. So we feel that it gives an overall better client partner experience. That's it. If you guys have any questions about our integration or our experience in there, feel free to ask questions. I'd be more than happy to, get more into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rich, Todd, and Asaf, for those great presentations. We've had a couple of questions coming in during the course of the webinar. So let's start with this one for Asaf. Asaf, can you talk a little bit about what the primary differentiators are for IntSights in the threat intelligence space?
Sure. So you can basically go to one of the slides that I covered early in my presentation, and I think that kind of helps to tell the whole story. So a lot of our competitors are, I would say, somewhat focused on either parts or or not entirely, but I would most specifically say parts of things that we are. So a lot of them are either focusing on a kind of TC or threat command kind of equivalent or a tip equivalent, but some of them may claim that they do a full suite of products, but honestly speaking, and again, the guys from obviously from Bandura and obviously from Davis Spoken, can attest to that that we have the full breadth and depth of products within the suite. So it's not only our threat command capabilities or our tip capabilities and or our risk analysis capabilities. I think kind of the strength of the platform is within the fact that everything is is comprehensive. It's in one kind of fully integrated suite of products. So you don't just get a one kind of siloed product. It helps you fit within your existing program. So whether you have a number of cross organizational kind of programs, so we can basically kind of fit in or plug in with either of our solutions, either one of them or all of them, within different aspects of the organization. So if to kind of answer your question from the beginning, we have the full breadth and depth of capabilities and products, to fit within each and every aspect of your existing, I would say, people, process, and technology in a sense.
Excellent. Thank you, Asaf. Here's one for Todd. Todd, does the Bandura Cyber solution work in both on-premises environments and the cloud?
Thanks, Stacey. That's a great question. So historically, we've been on premises, so on physical networks. At the end of this year, we'll be launching in cloud to protect workloads in the cloud. Our initial focus there will be in AWS, but soon after that, we'll be going to the other clouds, which would include Microsoft Azure, as well as Google Cloud Platform.
Excellent. Can you also talk a little bit about, are there other solution providers delivering this similar extra layer of protection for firewalls? And if so, maybe just touch on a couple of ways that Bandura Cyber is different or better.
Absolutely. So and that's a timely question too. So there are other kind of players in the space. And this space was defined a few years ago by Gartner as the threat intelligence gateway space. And it's timely actually because Gartner yesterday just published their market guide for security threat intelligence, and they mention you all, and they mention us, which is great. And they talk about threat intelligence gateways, and you can see kind of a list of some of the other players. I'd say some of the key differences is that the other vendors tend to historically have focused on very large enterprises proprietary hardware, very expensive solutions. So we're talking kind of service provider type focus. And then the other one is some of the vendors try to do soup to nuts. They want to provide you the threat intelligence platform, and then kind of the mitigation mechanism. Whereas, we're totally focused on that, making it actionable piece, and partnering with folks like IntSights to deliver the threat intelligence.
Excellent, thank you. Here's one for Rich. Rich, can you speak a little bit about the unique cybersecurity challenges faced by law firms, especially large ones like Davis Polk?
Yeah, within reason. So, going into legal, because I've worked in different verticals. I've worked in financial, I've worked in pharma, I've worked in the business intelligence space. And, one of the things that I found was interesting was legal, while smaller as far as overall footprint of people, does have threats larger than their weight, because, I think there was an article that came out from Ambient about 7 years ago that said legal was a soft underbelly of the financial industry. And I can tell you that all big law took that very personally and made huge investments in their security. But it is true in the fact that bad actors who might be more challenged in hitting a big bank or a Fortune 100 company will look for that same data in legal. So you have everything from nation state to your code kitty hitting. So it's a very large surface, and the amount of scans alone that we get hit with, the amount of bad actors that we see blocked every day on a daily basis is really at the same level that I used to see when I used to work for a big financial. And so the challenge there is that, where a big financial can afford, $150, $200 million on their security program, and that's a real number at one of the banks in New York that I know about. That obviously is not the same kind of money that can be spent by a law firm. So you have a smaller team that you have to have make sure is well educated and very effective, but you also need key tools that are force multipliers. That's always the driving thing behind what I use when I look at different tools to cover different areas of my security stack, is what is easy to use and effective in using it, so that I can't dedicate an engineer to a specific technology and that's all they do all day. All my engineers wear multiple hats and are well versed in different technologies, and we invest in them for their knowledge as well. But they have to be effective in all different tools, and that's how come we like tools like IntSights and Bandura. I was joking with Todd when he did his demo. When I first saw it, that it's so easy, even a chief marketing officer can do it. But it really is true. All these tools are very simple to learn, simple to use, and then it's a matter of really optimizing your strategy around them. So that's part of the challenges that we see and why we look for these type of tools.
Excellent, Rich. Thanks so much. That was really helpful. I think we've covered all the questions now. So in closing, the IntSights Bandura Cyber integration can help you maximize the ROI of external threat intelligence. So if you are an IntSights and/or Bandura Cyber customer and are not leveraging this powerful integration or need help maximizing its value, please contact Bandura to get started. Thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope to see you on an upcoming webinar. Please stay tuned to our events webinars page on our site to learn about and register for future sessions. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.